Hello, it's Iino. This time, I would like to broadcast logistics news in March 2023. In this news, I will focus on the shipping market and news from North America. Let's get started. DSV acquires two North American logistics companies. Danish logistics giant, DSV, announced on March 21 that it will acquire Arizona-based logistics companies, S&AMP Moving Systems West, and GDL, Global Diversity Logistics. The acquisition is expected to close next month, and the purchase price is undisclosed. In addition to Miami, DSV is expanding its air cargo charter network to Latin America, including the use of Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport in Arizona. Through the acquisition, it will strengthen its service to Latin America to meet the growing demand for cross-border transportation. Arizona is also increasing its presence as a sales and manufacturing base for electric vehicles, and DSV plans to expand its services to existing customers. Risk of recession in Europe reduced, demand recovery expected. Warehouses across Europe continue to fill up, and despite high inflation, there are growing expectations that the warehouse space will be sufficient to rebuild inventories later this year. Falling energy prices appear to have reduced the risk of a recession this year. Thus, one analyst said, it is likely that retailers will begin to empty their warehouses at the end of the second quarter and beginning of the third quarter. Transport volumes will increase, and freight rates will stop falling. This was a view shared by most forwarders. DHL Global Forwarding's global head of ocean freight said that the market is normalizing. Also that macroeconomic headwinds such as high inflation, interest rates, and inventory levels remain, but this is not a market collapse. He added, this is a trend toward stability, and we expect overall demand conditions to improve in the second half of this year. Container shipping volume ranking shifts in 11th place and below. According to Alphaliner, a French maritime research company, the ranking of the 11th largest shipping lines, in terms of container tonnage has changed significantly since last year. As the container ship market moved toward normalization, some mid-size carriers in the Asian region suspended long-haul services, such as European and North American routes, which they newly entered during the boom period. The reduction in shipping capacity, due to the decrease in demand for cargo transported from China to Europe and North America, appears to have been a factor in the fluctuations. The new ships are expected to be completed in the coming months, led by Wanhai with 36 vessels, 260,000 TEU remaining on order, followed by express feeders with 24 vessels, 110,000 TEU, and TS lines with 23 vessels, 90,000 TEU. The order backlog also varies, and the ranking is likely to change further in the future. Impact on employment at logistics companies. U.S. e-commerce trade slowing down. Courier, trucking, and warehousing companies cut some 17,000 jobs in North America in February amid a slowdown in e-commerce transactions. The boom in online ordering that occurred during Corona pandemic has slowed, and that has hit the warehousing and transportation industries particularly hard. As demand for freight slows and the supply chain disruptions that led to tens of thousands of new jobs recede, many logistics companies have curbed hiring or cut jobs in recent months. Buyers in North America bullish, not accepting price increases. Retailer-supplier relationships, transformed by the Corona pandemic, are changing to address shifting consumer spending and higher costs throughout the supply chain. Some retailers appear to be asking vendors to cut costs this year in an effort to lower prices for their customers, as high inflation begins to slow consumption. Companies are looking for ways to break through on the price front, pointing to lower transportation rates and lower commodity prices. Suppliers are responding to declining demand and requests for price reductions, but are finding it difficult to cope with their own operations due to rising costs caused by inflation. There is concern that consumer demand may decline, and in some cases this shift could cause tension in the supply chain. Let's turn now to the commentary section of today's logistics news. First, I brought you the news of DSV's acquisition of 2 logistics companies in North America. The 2 companies are owned by the same owners, and DSV will now operate a total of 11 logistics centers in Oregon and Arizona, covering approximately 93,000 square meters. With about 130 employees, it will integrate both companies into its air and ocean freight forwarding, ground transportation, and warehousing divisions following the acquisition. This U.S. logistics provider is involved in land transportation, international air and ocean transportation, and warehousing in the country, and has strengths in exhibition logistics and services for the semiconductor industry. DSV plans to strengthen its cross-border logistics with Central and South America, including semiconductor-related logistics and chartered aircraft transportation in the future. The corona pandemic has bifurcated the forwarder industry into profitable and not-so-profitable companies. Basically, the major companies earned high profits during the corona pandemic, and I personally expect that mergers and acquisitions will continue to increase in the future. It is because that it is by far the quickest way to capture a share of the market. After 2023, we will see more and more news like this. I hope that you will look at the news from that perspective and start to think about how you will get around. I then brought you news of demand recovery in Europe. February PMI survey data from S&P Global, the parent company of the Journal of Commerce, showed that pre-production inventories in Europe fell for the first time since September 2021, as companies stepped up efforts to eliminate safety stock buffers. While analysts and forwarders see more inventory rebuilding, retailers are more pessimistic about the market. In fact, there are no clear signs of increased demand, and most forwarders' forecasts for this year are speculative and uncertain in terms of European containerized import demand. The current European Consumer Price Index remains high at 8.5%, and inflation continues to rise. There are many ways to look at this, but it is worth considering the possibility that perhaps Europe might be one of the first to see a recovery in demand. Next up is news of a change in the shipping volume rankings. Of the top 11 to 30 companies, Hong Kong-based Emirates Shipping saw the largest increase in tonnage, up 55% year-on-year. This increase is said that the factored a change in policy from traditional chartering to supplying its own vessels as part of the company's efforts to expand its intra-Asian network. In practice, we do not only deal with major shipping companies. In international logistics, various problems can occur, and it is sometimes difficult to use a shipping company with strict rules at that time. In such a situation, there are many medium-sized shipping companies that offer flexible services, such as extensions of free time and cutoffs. It would be good to know roughly how the ranking of the shipping companies that your own company often uses will develop, as well as the supply of ships. It would be good to be able to check where they are going to introduce new vessels with interest. If you can use this kind of information in your everyday sales and purchasing activities, you will not only have the knowledge, but you will also be able to provide a wider range of services. Next, I reported 2 news items from North America. First one is about job cuts due to declining e-commerce trade. According to preliminary U.S. employment data for March, trucking, warehousing, and courier companies cut a total of 16,900 jobs in February, following a decline of 2,200 jobs in January. Meanwhile, the U.S. economy as a whole added 311,000 jobs, with growth in service industries such as restaurants, hospitals, and nursing homes. Consumer spending is shifting from goods to services. E-commerce industry was strong during corona pandemic, but it would not explode so much, such as furniture equipment and so on, without the purchase of used homes. Now that interest rates are high in North America, people are not buying houses, and the movement of goods is smaller. There was also news of the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, which caused the Fed to settle for a 0.25% rate hike in March. This may take more time to curb inflation, and I personally believe that a recovery in demand by the end of this year may be tough to achieve. The second piece of news from North America is news of a change in the relationship between retailers and suppliers. Logistics experts say that, now that shortages have eased and supplier-buyer relationships have returned to pre-corona pandemic levels, retailers are using their scale and buying power to gain more control over the supply chain. High inflation is continuing in the United States. Major retailers are refusing to allow further cost increases, while suppliers are unable to pass on higher raw material costs to their prices. If retailers are allowed to raise prices too much, inflation will not stop. However, if prices fall, demand may increase, and freight demand may also increase. It may take time, but we will continue to watch for such moves, as they may lead to a breakthrough in inflation later on. How was this issue of logistics news? I brought you the current state of the shipping industry, including ongoing inflation in Europe and the US, mergers and acquisitions of shipping companies that profited from the corona pandemic, and changes in consumer spending since the corona pandemic settled. I will continue to update you with more information. If you found this news informative, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share on social networking sites. That's all for this issue. Thank you very much.
In this channel, I explain about international logistics knowledge for your better understanding. I hope this video will be a good support for your logistics job. If you have any shipment from Thailand or to Thailand, please feel free to contact me Iino-san anytime. Also, I'm very motivated to keep updating these videos. If you subscribe, press good or comment anything. Well, thank you. See you next time.